Hey, welcome to the triple option -1 Trey Roland. We're going to continue with our position previews that we've been doing. If you haven't seen them, you should check out the ones we've done previously. We've done wide receiver and quarterback thus far, and we'll have more to come. So let's go ahead and jump right into things. AB, give me just a brief impression of your thoughts on the defensive back room.
Um, I think my initial impressions are that there's a lot of bodies, um, a lot of youth in that group, that I think is something not necessarily discussed. And then on top of it, maybe a lot of questions also. So at least for me, there's a lot of question marks about that room going forward long term. I think that well, obviously we'll get into it, but I think that Omarion Duke Cooper's probably your top guy in that room right now, and then after that, who is it? Who's your number two at least at the corner position? And then I think
I was about to say.
yeah, well, yeah, and it's in the safety room. I kind of consider them to be different, but I
Yeah,
guess
I think they would too as well.
yeah, and the safety room. I think you're led by your best player on the football team, and Jammie Robinson,
Yep.
the guy that I've been championing for since he got here, and is kind of my plant the flag guy. Is the guy that I think I've said would make the biggest impact on this defense, and he really kind of has. He really has kind of solidified that back end with his play. Um, can't wait to see what he does in his senior year before he heads off to the NFL.
Yeah, so to kind of clarify the positions we're talking about, because you can split DB up in a myriad of ways, but in the modern form of football, everybody's basing out of nickel nowadays. So that means nickel just means five, right? You've got five defensive backs, so you've got your two corners, um, your two safeties,
Mhm.
and then you've got this Sam backer who's now what's considered a nickel corner or a nickel backer, in case you weren't aware. What we were talking about is they generally are going to put the three safeties in a room if they're doing individual uh, position meetings. These two positions in particular, these three positions are pretty interchangeable. So you'll see, like when I'm at practice, I'll see Jones or I'll see Jammie Robinson here, and then I'll see him at um, I guess these safeties are kind of backwards what you would consider a
Mhm.
strong versus free safety. But either way, you would see them kind of interchanged in these roles. Um, and then the corners are kind of independent of each other. They do like to prefer to have a boundary versus a field corner, but in the days of hurry up offense, you can only do so much of that because you can't have guys running across the field to get to the other side.
Right. Yeah.
Um, So yeah, so we're talking about Jammie Robinson, who mostly plays this Sam, and you'll see him kind of play um, this safety role as well. So for whatever reason, it's not letting me move this today.
Yeah. When he started the season last year as that Sam, or they've what do they call it? They call it the stud.
Stud.
Um, he started the season there last year in that nickel role. They eventually slid him about game five. They slid him back into that free safety spot, and I thought that that's when the secondary kind of found its identity as far as being able to cover. And they put Kevin Knowles in at the stud and played it as a true nickel corner instead of that hybrid safety corner role, which Jammie fills more of.
Right.
Um, I mean, I think his he's most valuable at that free safety spot where he can come down and fit the run, but also play over top, and help out in their cover four stuff.
So before we get into the cover four stuff, I did want to highlight Jammie because I do agree with you. He's definitely probably the best player on the defense, and probably on the offense as well. So this is kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about Jammie Robinson. This is a play where it's going to be a jet sweep to this motioning wide receiver here. You have Jammie Robinson here, number 10, uh, in man coverage on him. So he's following him across the line of scrimmage. And you're going to see him take on a block and make a play in the backfield. And this is just the kind of, this earns you leadership on a team.
Yeah.
That kind of play.
Yeah, it's toughness. I mean, these are kind of some of the things you're not going to necessarily get out of Kevin Knowles, and what Kevin Knowles is. I mean, I think he will do those types of things. He's just not, he doesn't have the same stature as what Jammie Robinson does. I mean, Jammie's a safety up there playing in the box, whereas Knowles is more of a true slot corner type. So naturally, Jammie's built for this more than Kevin is. But yeah, I mean, in today's game, it's about stopping the pass. It's not about stopping the run anymore. So when they slid him back to that free safety spot, which they did after that game against Syracuse, I believe, I think that was the last game that he played the nickel predominantly. When they slid him back to the free safety spot, they were able to bring Knowles in. They were able to do some more stuff, some more man underneath. It helped. It helped with Knowles getting into his under coverage and quarter stuff, and them playing that better. And it really just kind of solidified the defense. I thought the secondary specifically and their coverages. They were very basic coverage wise. Kev, I don't know if you want to discuss some of the coverages before we get into talking about the players a little more.
let's talk coverage. Let's get in the nitty gritty. So to know Adam Fuller's defense is to kind of understand cover 4. He's going to play a lot of it. It's not abnormal to base out of cover 4. In general, you're going to base out of either cover 4 or cover 3. So you're not going to have enough people in the box to live without bringing one of these safeties in the box. So you can either bring one and drop one deep, and that's going to base you out of cover 3, or you can kind of try to have the best of both worlds where these safeties both kind of have a box presence, and they also have deep zones, but they're kind of halfway players instead of one explicitly in the box. So that's kind of where you get cover 4 from. So they play a lot of cover 4. They've kept it pretty simple. In the first year, you saw a lot of broken coverages. You saw less of that, especially at the end of the season last year. So one of the things that you want to do against cover 4, and one of the things that you're going to want to pay attention to when a team is playing against Florida State is the most common concept to try to beat cover 4 is called the Mills concept. So the Mills concept usually has this inside receiver, or you can switch them, has one receiver kind of running short over the intermediate of the field, usually on a dig or a hitch to try to occupy the safety. And that gets you a one-on-one matchup with this corner on the outside. So when teams beat Florida State deep, that's a lot of times how they're going to do it. Alternatively, they're going to do something like bringing, or actually, let's show that first. I do have a clip of that. So here's the Mills concept in action against NC State, who I thought had probably the best game plan against Florida State. So you have a form of quarters here. I won't get into this right now, but they don't. No one plays country quarters anymore, where you're just dropping to a zone, spot drop quarters. But this is a kind of man match concept. I've got a video explicitly talking about that on the channel. So what they're going to do is they're going to have one of these receivers do a hitch here and occupy this safety, and then another gets in this condensed set, gets all this room to run this deep post over the middle of the field and kind of isolate Jerriann Jones on one of their better receivers.
So let's rewind it back. All right, so just freeze it at the beginning there at the base. All right, so we're talking about quarters. Draw an arrow for the quarters of the field, and it's kind of natural. Outside the hash marks, it's a quarter. Yep, split the field into fourths. So these are the quarters that we're talking about. So for that safety, he's got to play anything that comes into his zone. And as that inside, as that point man in the trips, as he charges at him, he's presenting himself as a receiver that's going to enter that safety zone. So that safety's got to treat him as though he's going to get deep. Right. That guy's going deep. And when he squats, he jumps it, which is technically not his job.
Yeah, he's turning his hips to run with him. He gets stopped here.
Yeah.
And at this point, it's already too late.
Yeah. So,
So
you've got outside leverage by the corner. That's a tough ask. I think we even talked about this play
yeah.
when we did the film review for this game. But yeah, it's just tough, and teams can attack this, and this is one of the issues, and we'll talk about it more as we get into the linebacker preview at a later date. But your under coverage was so bad with the linebackers that you really got pigeonholed into doing a lot of things and being predictable. The teams could game plan this for you. So, um, yeah, I mean, the cover four is a great coverage. There's a lot of teams that run it. Florida State needs to be able to be more dynamic with their coverages, not be so pigeonholed, not be so simplistic, and hopefully improved linebacker play will help that, and a more veteran secondary too.
Another reason I wanted to talk about of why cover four is so used nowadays is you've probably heard of RPOs, right? Run pass options. You get this kind of glance slant route versus a running route, or sorry, versus a running play, usually inside zone or something of the sort, and they'll read one of these underneath defenders. So what cover four allows you to do is because you have these corners playing deep, it allows your safeties to kind of cheat down a little bit and kind of get into that post hole. So
Mm-hmm.
you'll see him here. I don't know who this is. This might be McClellion. But you got your typical cover four, right? This guy going, this guy going, this guy here, this guy here. They're kind of slow because they know they have outside help to drop. But here he is. He's reading this post, and he's just a second late getting into that window. But that's something that you hope to see improved in this
Yeah,
next
absolutely.
season.
But you'd also like to see a better job of physicality from your slot corner there too, which is a
Yeah,
part of it. There's a lot of moving parts in the secondary
definitely.
that go to find a success. All right, so let's get into some of the guys. Let's get into some of the names. There's a lot of guys back that we know. I'm going to start with two right away, who I think futures in this program are uncertain, to put it nicely. Um, we'll start with Jarvis Brownlee. I mean, this is a young man who played 800 snaps for you last year. I believe he's suspended right now. There's obviously a lot of hoopla out there on social media and whatnot about what's going on with him. That's not something I'm going to get into. I don't even have a damn Twitter. So, um, yeah, we'll see what happens with him. I am a believer of reliability. Um, I don't know Jarvis, so I can't speak to his how reliable he is, but he's proving himself to not be very reliable by being suspended. And I feel like ultimately this feels like a marriage or a relationship that is coming to an end very quickly, and one that may need to for the betterment of all parties. If he feels he's been wrong for some reason, whatever, then he needs to find a place where he feels happy. And if that's at Florida State, he can meet the criteria and the standard that needs to be met. Then, hey, I mean, he's a good ball player. It's a good corner. I said last year he was the best corner of the team, and I think that stood true for the most part until Omarion Cooper came in and really showed what he is. The other young man that I think that whose time at Florida State may be quickly coming to an end is Jerriann Jones. Much criticized, often criticized for his play. He's played a lot of snaps. I don't know how productive any of them really have been. He had that great pick against Carolina last year. It's just a young man who I'm not sure. I think he looks better than he plays, unfortunately, and I don't, mean that as a negative to him. Obviously, it is towards his game, but I'm not trying to bash any player here because they're obviously giving it their all, and he's been a good ambassador for Florida State and recruiting and stuff like that. So I don't want to, I don't want to belittle him, but I think that the standard of that position needs to get better, and I think it might be by him moving on. Some other guys to know at the corner position specifically. I mentioned Duke Cooper. I think that you can safely pencil him in as a starter at this point. Not to talk about depth chart or anything, but I
Yeah,
think that's
he's
a
looking
guy
really
that
good.
yeah, that's a guy. And Kev's seen all the guys. He's been out to practice a few times here recently. Um,
Here's before we move on from Cooper, I kind of wanted to show this clip. So NC State game again. This is my favorite play, mesh. So Cooper's got outside leverage on this receiver that just motioned over. He's playing man here, and they're basically setting a pick across the screen. And so this is a tough ask, right? Outside leverage, man coverage, guy running across the field in all this traffic. And as a freshman, this is just a play that doesn't get much notice.
Mm-hmm.
But he stops a 3rd and 7, right? He's there. Yep. He's there enough to turn this guy to get him to pause here, right?
Yep.
And that's just a little play that kind of shows you what he's about and what he's capable of as a freshman. That's a hard read and a hard play to make.
Yeah, well, hell, let's talk about the other guy that's in on that tackle, and that's Kevin Knowles. Maybe run that play again, and we can talk about Kevin, because Kevin's shown some good instincts here. Kevin Knowles played mostly the nickel last year. Once he took over for Jammie in that role. And I mean, he's got to find more consistency. He's got to find, he's got to stay true to his technique. I think sometimes he plays outside of the scheme a little bit and gets himself in trouble, but he's a ball player. I know that they're going to work him at outside corner. I don't think that that's a great fit personally. I think his height is going to, his height is going to be an issue out there. And I think he's got an opportunity to be picked on if he is your outside corner against some bigger receivers. The teams are going to attack that. I don't think he's Asante Samuel, who proved that he could live out on that island a little bit. But I like Kevin. I think he's a great player. I think he's got the potential, in the nickel to go on and have a career. That's becoming a popular thing in the NFL now. I think he's got a bright future. He's a guy that you definitely want playing in your defense. So you see, we're talking about there's two freshmen last year returning. You kind of get the sense of maybe why some of these older guys are being whittled out a little bit. Renardo Green's another player at corner was at safety. He started his career at corner, went back to safety. Now is back up to corner. You want to talk about what you've seen out of Renardo practice, Kev?
Yeah, Renardo's he's one of the more consistent players out there. You can tell he's kind of been around the block. He's pretty interchangeable. They move him from place to place, but he always finds himself on the field. So, I don't know if Renardo's not one of those guys that when you're watching practice, he's gonna like flash or stand out necessarily, but he's that's not a bad thing when you're playing defense.
Sure.
Right? They're not going after him. They know not to hit his side of the field. I think he's going to be a key player. I think he's going to be a kid you see step up and get a lot of reps. He can play a lot of different positions.
Mm-hmm.
I like him. I think he's going to be one of your starters this year.
Yeah. Hunter Washington's a guy who, potentially, he's a sophomore this year, potentially in the nickel role. Greedy Vance is a transfer, came in from Louisville.
Yeah, Vance. Vance has been getting a lot of first team reps actually in practice, and which is interesting. But not a lot of people were expecting
absolutely.
it. So we'll talk about that more in our practice preview that I'm sure we'll do.
Yeah. So Greedy Vance is a guy coming in from Louisville. He's been he was a take that I certainly questioned, and I think we questioned together when we did his film breakdown. I know others on the beat have questioned his game, and I guess his PFF grades were kind of all over the place last year. He put good tape on film, he put bad tape on film. So if you can find some consistency out of him, maybe you got something there.
And that's what you're seeing out of him in practice is he's hit or miss. He's either making the play or he's getting burnt. So
well, that's they've got bodies there. You're trying to create competition, get some of these guys to be a little more consistent. The last returner that I'll bring up is Demori Tate. Everybody's favorite 5-star who at this point hasn't done a whole lot. He's been banged up a lot, which is is part of the game. But have you noticed Demorie at all while you've been out there, Kev?
So Demorie's had a couple plays, especially in special teams, where he's looked pretty good. He hasn't really moved up much through. I guess he's getting second team reps as of now, and he's looked pretty good. I wouldn't say he looks like a 5-star amongst a team of 3 and 4 stars necessarily, but I will say this is probably the year you start seeing him on the field and start seeing him get some reps. But yeah, I wouldn't expect an All-American season out of him or
No.
anything.
And the two guys that may keep him from seeing those reps are the two newcomers, two true freshmen,
Yep.
early enrollees, Azariae Thomas and Sam McCall. By all accounts, Azariae Thomas has been probably the king of the spring. His name's in every practice report, making a big play. He's a guy has a ton of length, a ton of skill. I've compared him to Jalen Ramsey just off the hoof, just what he looks like. I'm not saying his game's the same, but you know, coming into college, he and Jalen look very similar, build wise, which is exciting. And it's good to see that it's translated to the practice field. He's been making plays. I think he fits this cover 4 scheme pretty nicely with all that length. And then McCall's kind of the same deal. He's a guy that athletically is maybe more gifted. We'll see in the long term, but I think potentially is more gifted athletically, but maybe not quite as tough as what Azariae is.
He's not as long as Azariae.
Yeah. So we're going to see, but I think they've certainly hit on those two true freshmen to this point. They've got a lot of reps in front of them before they get themselves on the field, but I think the potential exists for both of them to make a big impact this year.
Yeah, I think you could put McCall out there tomorrow and be pretty comfortable in what you're going to get. His form's good. You can tell he's comfortable in press coverage. He's got some things he needs to fix up. Az is a little bit. What comes with that length is just a little bit of a slow read off the line. So you'll see Jalen do this too. And he's just so talented that he can get away with this. But you'll see them with the quicker wide receivers kind of get beat off the line or take a second to be able to read. The thought is that maybe he's not as comfortable in press coverage, which they're asking him to do a lot. But his length and his athleticism is such a plus that he's able to make up ground and generally cover these guys that after he gets beat off the line. So
yeah,
that's something you like to see in a true freshman that's going to get faster at making those reads and better at mirroring those wide receivers.
Mm-hmm. But the nice part is, at the corner position, you've got a lot of length now. You've got a lot of skill, a lot of youth, which is concerning because these guys teams are going to game plan against that youth. And that's it's going to hinder you to the extent of you're not going to be able to do as much stuff as you want to coverage wise. But yeah, I think you're pretty excited about the corner. Let's transition into safety and we'll speed this up a little bit as we're dragging on here a little bit. At safety, what you got. You got Jammie Robinson, you got Akeem Dent. Two steady eddies, in my opinion. I think Jammie Robinson's the best player on this football team. I think Kev maybe agrees or is close to agreeing with that.
Yeah, I struggle to think of someone else.
Yeah, and then Akeem Dent, is a player who I thought shined last year.
Yeah, he much improved.
I think he gives you consistent presence back on that back end. He can play. He can really play anything you want him to at the safety. If you want him to play cover 2, if you want him to play middle of the field, he can get off a hash. He can get off the center of the field and help out over top of things. He does come down and play the run nicely. He's a player I think takes another step forward this year. Some other safeties, Shaheen Brown's a player I know that they like, but again, a raw player who needs to be developed. The more time he gets in practice, the better off he's going to be long term. That's a guy that they, probably for that buck role, that boundary safety, a good run fitting player, not going to be great in the middle of the field, but is going to do well to come down and fit the run. Same with Sidney Williams. Sidney Williams has sadly been injured quite a bit, in his time here. I'd like to see him have a healthy season because I think he's a player that can help you a lot. With these guys, they should have a nice rotation in safety, which is encouraging. And lastly, the main one is Jarques McClellion, transfer last year from Arkansas, was a corner at Arkansas, came in. He didn't really start playing a whole lot until the second half of the season, but what he did was really consistent. And I think that the biggest thing he gives you is just reliability. And I talked about it earlier with Jarvis that maybe you're lacking there, but with a kid like Jarques, you know what you're getting day in and day out, and I think that that's important. He's not the best football player on the field, but he's going to be in the spot that you need him to be in. He's got a lot of reps, and that counts for something when you're talking about a couple of younger corners up in front of you. Having a guy that you can rely on that back end and not give up big plays is important.
Yeah, so just to summarize everything we said, so you'll see a lot
There's a
of
lot of words.
you'll see a lot of cover four, which puts corners on islands, and places safeties in the box. So you see bigger, harder hitting safeties and longer, more athletic corners. They are replenishing the corner room, but it's young. The safety room is a little bit older and more established, maybe less top end, top like a ceiling there in the safety room compared to the corner room. But right now the floor is higher, and
Yeah.
you're hoping that having some of the better safeties probably in the ACC can help kind of bring along this really talented but young corner room.
I mean, just speaking of the ACC, I mean, I don't know I don't know everybody in the ACC at this point. I mean, it's a spring and transfer portal still going on, but I mean, just ranking wise, this safety group, I mean, I think you're right. They probably are a top 3 or 4 group in the ACC,
Yeah.
which is nice. I mean, that's in a cover four scheme, you want to be able to have good strong safeties
Yeah.
to cover up deficiencies. So all right, that's going to be our our spring DB preview. A lot of names, a lot of bodies. Sadly, we had to do a lot of talking for this one because there are so many guys. Some of our other videos going forward will be a little more film and a little more chalkboard heavy, as we don't have quite as many people to talk about because we know you guys like that. Um, we're going to be You're going to see this. You're going to have a practice report coming out here soon from Kev. So be on the lookout.
Yep.
Kev, you got
See you guys. See you guys for the next one.